Okay, first, insanely gorgeous episode. Like, the sets and visuals for The Wheel of Time is making The Witcher on Netflix look like a high school play production, which kills me inside because I absolutely love The Witcher. I kind of wonder if people thought this episode was too slow. I know usually people want to see a lot of blood, violence, sex, otherwise they're like, this was boring, it was filler, blah blah blah, and I'm completely with you. Who doesn't love to watch people die? And I think it's BS that we didn't get a sex scene. Come on. Just flashbacks. We just should have seen a full-blown sex scene between Moiraine and Siuan. Speaking of hate, please remember my talk about in a previous review, book purists. There were a lot of book changes and book lore changes in this episode, and there are going to be some Wheel of Time book purists that are really angry. As always, if you see them in the comment section, don't make eye contact and don't move. They can't see you if you do those things. And honestly, I've been through this song and dance with Game of Thrones. Anyone get that verbal play I just did? So I'm really sorry. It's going to continue on. If it's something that bothered you with Game of Thrones, having book purists complaining about the show, it's probably going to bother you with The Wheel of Time too. They've already changed quite a bit. All right, let's move on. The opening music was straight fire. Oh my gosh. I mean, the music has been really good for this season, and I'm assuming going to be even better for season 2 and beyond, but the opening music just was so good. It's like one of those things where every once in a while, you know, you hear a soundtrack in a show and you just want to find it online and listen to it over and over again while you do stuff like, I don't know, clean where you live, because it's just so epic and it pumps you up. Also, the opening with Siuan and seeing where she came from was just so heartbreaking. The man that played her father just knocked it out of the park. Seeing how upset he was, how emotional he was, made me emotional. And I know I'm a psycho bitch, and, you know, it's not easy to make me emotional. This made me emotional. And then the White Tower all those years later, girl, the look, the outfit, the throne, all gorgeous. I mean, Moiraine's complete get-together was gorgeous too, but Siuan's? Poor Logain, although he wasn't completely lying when he said, you know, the further you get away from the tower, people maybe aren't so stoked on you, Aes Sedai, which obviously we saw in the opening of this episode. And it really depends on where you're at in the world, how the majority views them. But it's kind of like, and I hate to bring up another fantasy franchise, like The Witcher, how Witchers are perceived is different depending on the person you're talking to. It's not always just location. It's just, it can be an individual thing. Although certainly there are places in the Wheel of Time where they're less liked. I cannot wait for more of Logain's storyline. Even if we just see a scene or two of him being experimented on, him just getting crazier and crazier, I'm all about. I'm assuming we're not going to see a lot more of the White Tower in this season. I mean, we might see a scene or two. We know that power is being destabilized, that Siuan on the throne, she's kind of being pushed aside because there's a lot of working together and political intrigue and whatnot. So maybe we'll see a scene or two, especially of Liandrin being a psycho bitch. And a tattletale. Snitches get stitches, bitch. Anyway, all of the visuals for the White Tower were so well done. I loved it. I never felt like I was seeing some CGI special effects monstrosity with any of the sets, and that's impressive. So kudos to you. Now let's move on to the potential Dragons Reborn. I'm so glad they didn't draw out them coming back together. I would say in other franchises, they would milk that for all it's worth, and it would have been an extended thing of them coming back together, and Amazon is not messing around. They're like, nah, you guys are back together. Let's move on. Nynaeve kind of pissed me off this episode, which is weird because I've loved her previously. I feel like it's just the whole defiant bratty thing is getting on my nerves, though. I guess that's kind of true to her in the books. She's a bit prideful. She's the type of person that points out everyone else's flaws while ignoring her own, and how she's just a huge hypocrite. That's basically her character. So if you find those people infuriating, you're gonna find her infuriating, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I think the difference is it's really hard to show that type of personality in live action without it becoming very annoying, like you can in the books, and it's like, oh, okay. I still like this character. And I'm not saying I don't like Nynaeve. I absolutely love her, especially, oh my god, when she was in front of Siuan and she was talking about the most powerful channeler, and then Egwene smiled like it was her, and then no, it was Nynaeve, and still she wasn't impressed, and she's just like, whatever. Can I go now? Though that insult by Moiraine, you know, if you're gonna have the title of wisdom, maybe try, I don't know, having some was the sickest burn. I understand being an elderly woman, I'm not allowed to use that terminology, burn, but I'm going to anyways, and you can't stop me. On the other side, Egwene was so adorable this episode. I've been kind of iffy on her, but this episode, I loved her so much. Also, poor Perrin, he didn't have a lot of dialogue or scenes. It was just basically, hey, I'm laying here in pain, and then we got to see him towards the end. So I know we're gonna see more of him, but it was kind of like, aw, you little cutie. Now, if they don't make the Wᴇs absolutely crazy next episode, I'm going to be really disappointed. And I will warn you, if they do go that route of showing how it actually is, don't be under the influence of anything. I mean, weed, alcohol, drugs, or, you know, just oxygen in general, because shit's gonna get trippy. Now, I'm guessing, and I could be completely wrong, I don't know. I didn't follow any leaks for the Wheel of Time, which is very rare for me. Usually I follow leaks for fantasy sci-fi shows, and I just didn't have the time this year, unfortunately. I'm assuming they get to the Eye of the World, they face a big bad, and then cut. Season 2 is when we see something going on. Like, maybe the battle begins, it's looking like, oh no! And then to kind of entice people that maybe aren't book readers to be like, oh, what's gonna happen next season? Although, and I want to say this with so much peace and love in my heart, I want you to imagine really quick, you're from a backwaters village. Some witch comes and is like, hey, one of you is a legendary hero reborn. She takes you from your village, you end up doing some travels, and then she's like, hey, we're gonna go through this gate, and you're gonna face off against the Dark One. I'd be like, okay, bitch, are you not gonna train me at all? Are you not gonna prepare me? Like, I get that I'm the Dragon Reborn, and, you know, I'm redoing what I did before, but do you wanna train me at all? Do you wanna prepare me? Like, I don't know, just think about that, of just taking someone from a village, being like, you are the chosen one. Now go fight the Dark One, the big bad of the entire world. I would be a little bit, hey, do you want to prepare me a little bit more? Would that be cool? Just not shove me in front of him? Lastly, Matt, you bitch. Now, I'm going to do a segment for book readers where I just talk a little bit. So if you're a non-book reader or you just don't want spoilers or really potential spoilers because they're changing so much, like, subscribe, don't watch beyond this. I love you. Please return my calls. So I'm guessing with Matt, the reason why he didn't go with them, which he does in the books, is because they're recasting the actor for Matt. So I'm guessing, and this is a complete guess, I could be wrong, I have no insider information or leaks or whatever, that he stayed behind because they're recasting the character, a different actor is going to play it, so maybe Matt goes back to the dagger, and it ends up physically changing him, because Moiraine said, hey, if he touches the dagger again, he's going to be changed forever, so maybe that's what's happening. He goes back to the dagger that was left there, he touches it, and he's physically changed, and that's how they describe or explain the character change. I would guess. I actually think that's a pretty interesting thing to do and pretty clever. I know it's a big change from the books, but I think it's a little bit fun. Though they could go the complete opposite route and have him look completely different with the actor that replaces the previous actor and just not say anything about it. Think about Game of Thrones, Dario, when they replaced him with a different actor and just nothing was mentioned. Like, complete night and day between the two actors that played him, and just nothing was said. The Ways was interesting. Obviously, they're changing the lore around it, which I guess isn't bad. I'm just hoping that they explain it in a way that makes sense and isn't really cheap. But I am interested to see how they portray the Ways, even though they've changed the lore behind it already. I'm not upset about Moiraine and Siuan being lovers. I mean, it was described in the books that when they came to the tower, they were pillow buddies, so obviously they were intimate with each other. I'm just curious whether this is going to be a endgame sort of thing, because we know she ends up with Tom, so I don't know. I feel like they're just doing this to drum up more drama of Siuan is ousted from her seat, and there's, you know, she's stilled and all that, and I guess feeling worse for her than you would otherwise of, oh, Moiraine's lover is going through all of this and has been displaced as being on the chair and now can't access the one power and all that. I feel like they just did that to add a level of drama. I have a feeling, and we know from the books some shitty things happen to Siuan, that she kind of gets pushed to the side and Moiraine ends up with who she ends up with in the books. I would guess. They can obviously change that. Lastly, obviously, the Eye of the World, they're not facing the actual Dark One, they're facing a servant of him. I would assume it's one of the major players that serve him, and then that's going to be the end of season 1, the battle begins. I don't know, and you can let me know your thoughts on this. If the Aes Sedai were a little bit more knowledgeable on the Dark One in the books, where in the show they're kind of like, we don't really know. There's so many different prophecies. If that bothers you a little bit, I don't think, and this is my own personal opinion, they're not going to make the Dark One a physical character, because he's obviously not in the books, but what if they did? What if they had to do that because they felt like the general audience wouldn't understand? I'm a little bit worried about that. I mean, imagine explaining to someone that's never read the books, being like, oh yeah, the Dark One isn't actually human, and actually was imprisoned outside of time and space and creation by the creator of the universe, and he's coming through, but he doesn't have complete power, which is why he needs to influence humans and kind of be like, oh, if you help me, you get all this power. So I don't know where they're going with that and how they're going to explain it. To me, I feel like it would be really easy to explain to general audience, but I feel like studios act like the average viewer is dumb, and whether you believe that or not, I guess is up to you. I have a little bit more faith in humanity, but that can certainly be stomped out very quickly. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I am really excited to see the final episodes and where they end up ending it, but please let me know what you think about it so far. Like, subscribe, come back for more sci-fi fantasy.